a shellacking. Mike Tomlin's quote, "They kicked us in the teeth."
And they did.
Yeah, and guy there to hear it all and to see it all for The Athletic. Nobody reports longer, better, more quality coverage than Matt Barrows. Also The Athletic or theathletic.com. If you don't have a subscription, I highly recommend it. And Matt joins us each and every Monday. We're talking today, and we'll do this every once in a while because of travel. Matt, we appreciate you. Welcome home. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much.
What, if anything, surprised you about Sunday's game from the Niners side?
Well, I mean, we went into the game, and I think we discussed this, looking at some potential weaknesses. I mean, where the expectations are so high for this team, but where are some weak points and where things can go wrong? And I think we were right on a couple of them, which is right tackle.
Yeah.
That was glaring, but might not be as bad for the rest of the season. I don't know. I think that's what the wishful thinking is for the 49ers. And then the nickel spot was sort of topsy-turvy all game. It didn't really have an effect, but you saw a weakness there. And then we all thought that that kicker might be a weak spot too. That definitely was not. And I think 49ers fans watching that game and those who watched the preseason where Jake Moody struggled, that was the Moody that the 49ers saw at Michigan and the guy who we all saw during training camp. Very hard to rattle, just really kind of even, it's the same stroke, whether it's a point after attempt or a 55-yarder. So I think the 49ers must be, breathing a sigh of relief that, this is the guy we thought we were getting. Everything is starting to get back to normal as far as the kicking game.
Talking with Matt Barrows again, coming to you via the Folsom Lake Honda hotline. Folsom Lake Honda, your one-stop Honda shop. Matt, again, results not entirely surprising. Niners are a very good team. But to me, what stood out was that almost entire first half, but up to like the last 2 to 3 minutes of the first half, they were as sharp as, maybe in their 10-game win streak at the end of the year. Like they were in late season form. Did that part of just how polished they looked surprise you?
Yeah, I did, especially since, we hadn't really seen them together all that much. It reminded me of the 2019 opener in Tampa Bay. And there's a lot of similarities there. On the road, Nick Bosa that year had just had an ankle injury and really hadn't started practicing until the week before that game against the Bucs. And so you didn't really know what you were going to get out of him. Was he going to start? How much was he going to play? How effective was he going to be? And if you remember that game, the defense just took over. That defensive line dominated Tampa. Jameis Winston, threw them a lot of picks. I think 2 of them returned for touchdowns. So nothing like that in Pittsburgh. Although Hufanga almost had a pick and then a lateral that almost turned into a score there too. So I mean, just the vibe was similar, where it was obvious from jump that one unit, the 49ers defense, had just overwhelmed the opponent. And, the 49ers rode that defensive line, and it wasn't always intact in 2019. They did have some injuries. Dee Ford basically wasn't healthy from week 2 onward. But that group was so good with Bosa, Buckner, Eric Armstead, that they rode it to the Super Bowl. And, it looks like this group, the current group, is just as good, if not better, because that was another question mark in my mind. Is the other defensive end spot really any better than it was? I mean, you got Cleveland Ferrell, who, sort of was a, I don't want to say mistake, but didn't live up to his draft status in Oakland/Las Vegas. And you had Drake Jackson, who basically was taken off the field late last season because he was ineffective. So that was a question to me. Are those guys really any better than Samson Ebukam and Charles Omenihu and Jordan Willis and the crew that basically manned that spot last year? And, the early indication is that, it's better and it's much better. So I think that's a strong positive sign for the rest of the season too.
The Athletics, Matt Barrows joining us. So I'm going to give you a fan question now. And by fan question, I mean me. If I, we'll get to Colton McKivitz in a second. But if I had notes from the game, very few notes for Coach Kyle Shanahan. One of them was, and I feel like this is a habit of his, Matt. We're halfway through the fourth quarter. This game is 100% decided. There's no miracle happening. And we're still feeding Christian McCaffrey down the middle from Brock Purdy. Everybody's still out there. Am I overreacting, or is there something, especially with the luck the Niners have had or lack thereof, of, you don't often get these games, maybe pull your guys?
Yeah, and some other folks have noted that, they have that play call where it's one-on-one between McKivitz and TJ Watt, midway through the third quarter. And, that's the one where Purdy gets crushed and loses the ball. And it's awfully similar to the play in Philadelphia where Hassan Reddick wasn't exactly the same block, but, which Purdy is kind of unable or unsure where to go to the ball. He holds the ball a beat longer and then takes a real big hit. So, yeah, I think that's a fantastic question. To me, I don't want to blame Purdy, the victim there, but in that circumstance, and I think on that play that I'm talking about, Shanahan explained that the coverage wasn't what they were expecting. So, the drop back and throw didn't happen. He had to survey the field more to find an open receiver. But to me, just in that circumstance, if no one's open immediately, maybe just get rid of the ball and don't take the sack, don't take the fumble. I know making plays is part of his DNA, but in that situation, maybe the wisest thing is just to kind of send it sailing out of bounds.
As we're talking with Matt Barrows here from The Athletic, Matt, they brought up Christian McCaffrey too on the, feeding him the ball late, but when they were feeding him early, the success was ridiculous what he's able to do. And he's obviously been gifted, but when he's been a Niner from the 10 games a year ago to this year, I mean, he's played like an MVP. What kind of overall year do you think he's got ahead for him?
I mean, I thought a 1,000 year was realistic. Certainly not far-fetched, just because of how they were using him in the preseason. And he didn't have the receiving portion of that on Sunday in Pittsburgh. He certainly had the running part of it. And I imagine there will be games where he's used much more as receiver. The 49ers tried to get that going at times, to Debo, to Christian McCaffrey, and to their credit, the Steelers had that aspect pretty much snuffed out. They were ready for the screens and the short passes and bringing their safeties up and doing that. But, it's been, this is the first off season we've covered Christian McCaffrey. So sort of watching his routine has been interesting. Back in the spring, just about every 49er of note was at most just sort of going through the motion of practices, just sort of, there to kind of learn and to be on hand, but mostly on the sideline. We're talking even Fred Warner, certainly Trent Williams, George Kittle, basically watching those practices. Christian McCaffrey was out there as if it was, a December game for the division title. He was out and going full speed. And we're talking May and June practices here. You don't often see that from somebody of his caliber. And that's what he does. He gets ready physically in the spring, and then by the summer, he's sort of already at top speed. And so, when the season begins, he's already rolling. And I think you saw that on Sunday. Really an impressive game from him. His best game as a rusher since 2019, which was that 1,000 season when he was with the Panthers. So I still think that's a possibility. He's got to obviously have some games where he's a bigger part of the pass game, and that may be only if the 49ers are trailing or it's a tighter game, and those scenarios may not just happen as often as they did for Carolina a few years ago, but certainly has the ability to do it.
The Athletics, Matt Barrows joining us. We always talk 49ers, but this is fair. As you were coming on, the Jets have confirmed it is a full tear of the Achilles for Aaron Rodgers. He is out for the season. His career is in jeopardy. And there is a little bit of a Niners tie here, Matt, as you well know. Back in 2020 at MetLife Stadium, 5 49ers suffered lower body injuries in that game. Nick Bosa, Solomon Thomas, both had season-ending injuries. There's been a lot of talk about turf. It's only going to grow into a cacophony now, especially with MetLife removing the turf and putting grass in. Obviously you remember that tie-in. Also, I wonder, we mentioned this earlier, is this a players union issue? Historically, that NFL players union, not the strongest, but I'm sure you agree. There's going to be a lot of talk about turf over the next coming weeks.
Yeah, and there should be. And you're right. It was a big deal for the 49ers. They didn't want to play in that second game of that back-to-back just because the first one was so devastating. And to me, what's interesting is that, a lot of times on issues, the, players' instinct is not to say anything, to kind of toe the line and, say the company words. But on this one, you do hear the George Kittles, the Nick Bosa's, the Fred Warners, very prominent voices, and even more prominent now, I think, after Bosa, wins Defensive Player of the Year and has this big contract. He's a voice in this league. He's a voice when you see his name in a quote, you pay attention to. So I'm sure he's going to be asked about it this week, and I'm hoping that he is vocal and something sharp. Because I know that the field in Pittsburgh has been criticized over the years from time to time, but they had a high school game on Friday. The Pitt Panthers played there Saturday, and then the Steelers and 49ers played there on Sunday, and the grass was fine. I mean, there were a couple instances where guys fell, but geez, I mean, this is football. I mean, you're going to have to deal with a divot or two from time to time. If it certainly beats the alternative of some of these artificial fields where you're regularly seeing these Achilles and these lower leg injuries. I mean, it's documented that it's more dangerous in terms of those types of injuries to play on those surfaces. So I do think that with the Aaron Rodgers, I mean, this is a big deal. I mean, Hard Knocks basically spent a full summer, trumpeting the arrival of Aaron Rodgers as part of the Jets. He was treated like a prince out there. And now, just 4 plays into the season, he's gone. So that's something that they have to deal with. And the players are right. They're changing out all of these turf fields, or a lot of them, for grass for the upcoming World Cup. With the kind of the message being, okay, if it's the World Cup, okay, it's an important enough event for grass. But if it's just football, let's get away with artificial turf. And I think the players are catching on to that.
And Jason, a lot of people are probably wondering, I'm sure, the Niners play the Giants in 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. That's here.
That's here, the home opener finally. But between that, Matt, is let's at least look at this week. The Rams, I think they had a surprise, at least the convincing way they beat Seattle this week. What's your early thought on the Rams-Niners matchup?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Cooper Kupp's going to play in the game. It seems to be trending that way, and he's been the biggest 49er thorn in their side in these last few games. That game last year in L.A., and I know the 49ers won it pretty handily, but they targeted Cooper Kupp 19 times in that game, which is an absurd number. He was their offense that week. And like we said at the start, I mean, I think that's still an issue for the 49ers, that nickel position. They used 2 different configurations on Sunday. They began the game with Diamador Lenore at nickel, which meant that Ambry Thomas came in on the outside. And in the second half, they went to what they had intended to do all season, which is to use Isaiah Oliver as the nickel, which allows Diamador Lenore to stick on the outside and not sort of toggle back and forth between the two. I personally think that's the better way to go. You're just asking less of some young players, but it'll be interesting to see how they continue to do that throughout the season. I don't know if the Rams will have a huge challenge there. They certainly were better than expected in Week 1, but they'll certainly. The Rams will certainly look at the Pittsburgh game and kind of figure out, okay, this is their weakness that tends to kind of skew to one of our strengths. So let's see if we can exploit it.
Matt Barrows with us, off field with Eric Armstead's restructuring on, I believe it was Saturday. The 49ers, this just still makes me laugh, have the most cap space in the NFL, north of $40 million. And there's a lot of questions as to, it would make sense. They're gearing up for next year when some extensions are due. It keeps them flexible. There's a number of ways they could go. But you also have Niner fans that are old enough to remember when they traded for the best running back in football last year in the middle of the year. And there's guys like Brian Burns with the Panthers and others that may or may not be looking to get out. You know how the rumor mill fits. Matt, are you leaning more towards, re-signings and extensions and cap flexibility? Boring. Or are you leaning, is there a party that thinks John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan may have a hammer up their sleeve at some point this year?
Yeah, I don't know if they've got a specific hammer up their sleeve, but I mean, I think it's there to roll over for next season, so you can start accommodating all of these big salaries, the chickens of which are coming home to roost. But I mean, if there is a catastrophic injury somewhere, and I'm not going to jinx it by identifying a position, but my point is that. The 49ers seem very much intent on going to the playoffs and trying to win the Super Bowl. If there's a big injury, a critical injury to a critical position, they would have the wherewithal. They would have some wiggle room to try to remedy that during the season if they could. So it would kind of give them a kind of second life, if you will. At least give them the shot of addressing a spot that in any other year, it might be a death blow for this team. But with all that room, they could make a move to sort of kind of plug the dam, if you will, to kind of continue the dream of 2023.
Matt, the 49ers over the last couple of years have gone through this kind of quarterback carousel, moving guys in and out and different things, and the whole Trey Lance situation's now resolved itself, but they've really settled in on Brock Purdy, and for game 1, just another one, he just looks great. I don't know what it is about his confidence, swagger, and then performance. He just seems to check all the boxes. What did you think about Purdy in week 1?
Yeah, to me, I mean, he jumped out the most. I went back to last season where you had a couple of second-year players, Justin Fields and Trey Lance, playing in the opener, and I realized that the weather was such that nobody was going to look great, but you saw them as they looked like second-year players. They were up and down. They were erratic. And then, lo and behold, this year's opener has a pair of second-year quarterbacks, too, and Kenny Pickett and Brock Purdy. And Kenny Pickett looked a lot like Lance and Fields did, and Purdy looked a lot like a veteran, a multi-year veteran. And to me, he looks like, I was going to say Jimmy Garoppolo, but it's really peak Jimmy Garoppolo. When Jimmy Garoppolo had really kind of figured out the offense and he wasn't throwing interceptions and everything was on time. Because second year Jimmy Garoppolo, I remember that 2018 season, he tears his ACL in Kansas City in the third game, but those first 2 games were not smooth. He did not look like he had mastered this offense. Whereas Purdy in the same situation does. So, I mean, he's taken a time machine to, 5-6 years into his career, and that's where he seems to be. He plays like a veteran. I think the one worry is the hits that he takes. And sometimes he brings them on himself by kind of scrambling for extra yards, and sometimes he might hold the ball a little too long. But that would be the only sort of worry/red flag. Everything else, like he looked like he was in control. The game is still not too fast for him, and I think that's what Kyle Shanahan likes the most about him is that the timing is excellent. The timing is exactly what the head coach expects.
Just 1 minute left, Matt, but I got to ask you, Drake Jackson, 3 sacks, basically our version of TJ Watt, taking zero credit, obviously, away from Drake, who worked tremendously hard in the offseason. But how much credit, if any, do you also give to Eric Armstead and the rest of that line that really seemed to open up things? We knew they'd open it up for somebody, and Drake Jackson did the right thing and walked right through that door.
Yeah, I think his first sack really kind of illustrates what you're saying. Eric Armstead kind of blew up the center of the line. He had a shot at the quarterback and basically chased him towards Drake Jackson. Drake Jackson's real strength in that game, I mean, once he was close, it was over. And he really showed his athleticism, his ability to get a quarterback on the ground, which, it sounds simple. A lot of times, the quarterback's able to kind of wriggle free of scenarios like that. And Jackson, like I said, is really, he's got great flexibility. He's got long arms. He's really terrific as far as once he's close to the quarterback, he's diving for those legs, and usually that guy's not gonna get away. But you're right. I mean, if you look at the double team scenarios, Bosa always gets a lot. Armstead got a lot. Javon Hargrave got a lot. The guy who was benefiting from all those double teams was Drake Jackson, and to his credit, he took advantage of them. And that's something that maybe that's the difference between the other DNs from last year, the non-Bosas from last year, and the non-Bosas from this year. That if you don't double team a Drake Jackson, he's going to make you pay at the end.
That's Matt Barrows. Sorry for that sound. If you heard that there towards the end, somebody needs to.
I thought it was the Academy Award
playing you off. No, Carmichael Dave, using the third person, needs to learn to mute his tabs. It sounded like that scared me. If you saw that on the YouTube, I jumped. Matt, thanks for working overtime for us today. Welcome back home. Shorter flight for you, just a little bit to Los Angeles this weekend, and we look forward to talking to you on Monday.
All right, sounds good. Talk to you guys then.
Thank you. Bye-bye. That is Matt Barrows. We are late for a break. 4 Down Territory coming up next. Deion Sanders, I see in there. Love a little college football entry in there, Jason. And also